how close were the Leafs in on trying to land him from Carolina?
Well, let me rewind the tape a bit, and I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to say something else first. But when
Okay.
you're talking about Mikko Rantanen's contract, and you'll follow my line of thinking here, it's not that advanced. But
Sure.
with Mikko Rantanen, the biggest winner in him signing that deal at the deadline, other than him and his family, is Mitch Marner. Because Mitch Marner is now the number one, without question, free agent set to potentially be available on July 1st. And so I don't think Mikko Rantanen's number necessarily affects Mitch Marner. I mean, certainly he's got a better points per game and all those things. Like when teams do those evaluations, when you're looking for comparables, it's basically what negotiations are built on. You might argue that Mitch Marner doesn't deserve to surpass Mikko Rantanen's contract. But the one big, huge screaming caveat here is Mitch Marner might be on the open market. And when you're on the open market and you're available to 32 different potential employers, you're worth whatever someone says you're worth. It doesn't matter what any other player in the league makes. And at a time when the salary cap is about to explode, in a season where, frankly, Mitch Marner has even exploded a little more than he has in the past. And listen, he's been a consistently high-performing player. He's been nominated for a Selke Trophy. He's been a top point producer from pretty much the minute he entered the league, but certainly the last number of years. He's in a tremendous position with leverage to, it's not just about picking a destination, but to reset the bar for what top offensive players make in the league. And so that bleeds into your question about the Leafs and Rantanen. What happened in the lead up to this deadline is that it became clear to the Leafs that Mitch Marner wasn't going to negotiate an extension with them prior to the deadline. Like they weren't going to get the certainty that Mitch Marner was going to be a Leaf long term. That's not the same thing, and I really have to underline this. It's not to say he won't still be a Maple Leaf beyond the season. That's in the realm of conversation possibility still. But Mitch Marner didn't want to give up the chance to potentially peak at free agency by signing a contract now. And so the Leafs have to start considering what their future looks like without Mitch Marner. Like that's the natural conclusion of that set of decisions. I mean, Mitch didn't want to negotiate with the Leafs. And he still said he wants to be in Toronto. Like two things can be true at once. Like this story has a lot of nuance, and I'm worried about getting radioed by one piece of it. But I do think the nuance is important here. Mitch has earned the ability, and he's performed at a level that he can do something like what top NHL player in his prime goes to free agency? The last one might be John Tavares. Like the last comparable to what this situation is now trending towards being.
Right.
And so, Mitch Marner has decided that he wants to ride this through. He wants to, like, as much as we've talked through the season, like the Leafs want to see the playoffs before signing Mitch. He wants to see the playoffs before signing in Toronto or thinking about it. And my understanding is there's tons of conversations that go on with the Leafs and Marner's camp. I don't think there were really any negotiations. Like at this point, I think Mitch is, communicated to the Leafs, like, I'm not ready to think about those contracts. It's not like he's turning down offers in an official way. He didn't engage. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't sit down and you say, I want to pay you 8 and I'm saying I want 12 and you split the difference or whatever. Those aren't real numbers with Mitch Marner. I'm just
not real numbers. Not real numbers.
Merely making a point. Well, there's no point in getting into numbers. He hasn't put there's no numbers. The numbers aren't there. I'm sure the Leafs said, hey, we would do something like this, but they might have even made an offer. But Mitch's side has said, we're not ready to negotiate. And so, he's in a really compelling position now because, and so that's put the Leafs now have that information ahead of the deadline. Well, what do? First of all, this was a go for it year for Toronto. They had first round picks in 26, 27 beyond, second rounder in 25. They didn't trade that in the end. They have some prospects that a lot of teams like in Fraser Minton, Easton Cowan, Ben Danford. Minton obviously ends up going to Boston in a deal we'll talk about in a bit. But the Leafs had that sort of capital to deal from, and they were looking around for the best possible options. And among those options was Mikko Rantanen. And so, yes, the Leafs had, I think that there was a wave of different conversations with Carolina. Like, I think that there was different possibilities put on the table for what a trade could look like, including right up until, before he ended up becoming a conditional Dallas Star on that negotiation. By the end, it seemed that Carolina's, if you want to liken it to the deal they got from Dallas, I think Matthew Nyes was the Stankoven in that deal. And then you're looking at all the draft capital beyond that. Perhaps one of Toronto's other prospects was involved. That I don't have confirmation on that, but that's the framework of what the deal could have been at the end. I think that there was an earlier version where, hey, would you flip Marner for Rantanen? But Mitch Marner has a no movement clause.
Yeah.
So that never happened. And so, basically the Leafs were in on Rantanen because they have to start imagining what the future could look like without Marner. And the crazy thing about all this is there's still a world where Mitch Marner just signs a big money extension in Toronto at the end of all this. But he's got leverage and he's going to use it. I mean, that's how it is. He's earned that. Like this isn't about good and evil, or anything like that. This is straight up. This guy is a top level talent in the league, having an awesome season, and he's got the contractual rights to shop himself to the whole league as of July 1st. And it looks like right now, that's how this is going to play out.
Marner for Rantanen would have been the holy shit of holy shits of trades on deadline day. Like a 1-for-1 superstar caliber for superstar caliber player swapped for each other, both of them pending UFAs. Holy shit. I'm just processing that now. That's crazy.
And do you know what's crazy? These guys have had mirroring careers in the sense that they're same stage of their careers, same year, like they both signed 6-year second contracts. The difference was Mikko Rantanen didn't get full no move protection in his deal, in his second deal when he was eligible for it. Mitch Marner did. And so Mikko was blindsided by that initial trade from Colorado. Colorado got to the point where they weren't sure they could sign Mikko before the deadline because Mikko wouldn't engage in contract talks. So they decided to trade him. The Leafs didn't have that ability, right? Mitch Marner had a no movement clause. The Leafs couldn't send him to some other place and be like, hey, you're not negotiating. We got to make our decisions. And so that was the key difference. And that's why it's so funny. That's why players fight hard to get those no movement clauses, even modified no trades. Like, it gives them some control of their future, because I do think there's a world look, it's not a very productive way for us to get in this conversation, but there's a world that if Mitch Marner didn't have that trade protection, I think that trade happened. Like, I think if everything else was the same, except for he didn't have the no move clause, I think they probably make that move and try with Mikko. Right. And so anyway, it's what a deadline. And then as my original point is, no one benefits more with Rantanen signing than Marner, because there are so many comparables there. Like, if they both hit July 1st on the same day, obviously lots of teams will be bidding for both. It might muddy the waters. This is now this is set up to be an auction. This is just set up like, hey, and at a time when all you teams are getting $8 million more in cap space, or $7 million more in cap space, and there's lots of teams out there I know that need a superstar. Who wants to pay what for me? What kind of lifestyle can you give my family? What kind of opportunity can you offer me? Chicago, you need a superstar.
I've said Chicago. I've linked Chicago to Marner since that live show in Coburg. I said Chicago. I want that known.
There you go. I'm not saying it's Chicago, but I'm just saying, Carolina, you need your star. Hey, Vegas, you always need a star. You
always need a star. You're always rolling the dice.
One more star. Hey, Florida teams, like you got a great place to live. You're competitive.
We'll get Florida in a second.
No, but I'm saying, look at, I haven't done the numbers. Like, I haven't looked at this closely, but off the top of my head, I do know that Sam Bennett and Aaron Ekblad are both UFAs in Florida. Like, the Panthers probably have some cap space if they want to go for Marner. I'm not saying they do. Just this is the opportunities, though. This is that Mitch is unlocking by potentially going to July 1st. And so, the stakes are so high for Mitch. Obviously, they have been all season. Look, he's performed without this guarantee. He's having his best offensive year. He made the play that helped Canada score the McGolden goal at the Four Nations.
That's what we're calling it, the McGolden goal?
No, I don't know. I saw someone call it that.
I was about to say, like, do we have a sponsorship with McDonald's or something that I didn't know about?
Well, you already saw the McDonald's that have been renamed McDavid's in a few places.
I did see that, yes.
I don't think anyone else is. I don't think anyone's truly calling it that. I just saw it referred to that, and I was like, that's kind of unique. Anyway, Marner's had a great year. He's earned this, and man, we've spent like 30 something minutes and talked about one trade and then one fallout of the trade that didn't happen.
I was wondering if you wanted to segue into the Leafs day, since we went down the Mitch Marner hallway, and it's not going to be the last time we enter that zone. And there's a part of me purely for the story, that wants the Marner story to extend into July 1st. So that way we can all see just like the options available to him, the money possibilities for him. Like, you talk about the craziness that could happen in an NHL season, on the ice, off the ice. That's right up there, if it gets to that point.
If you're looking at it, the most likely option right now is Mitch Marner becoming a free agent on July 1st. That's the most likely option. Players typically don't after the deadline with their own teams until the offseason, like until they're eliminated from the playoffs, essentially.
Right.
So the next window of opportunity truly for the Leafs to negotiate with Marner will be once the season is done. Now they're hoping that's like, they're hoping they go to Game 7 of the Cup final. Wasn't Game 7 of the Cup final last year like June 23rd?
It was like super late in the year.
My point is, the Leafs are hoping it's not until June 23rd that they're even having that next conversation, because it means they're playing for a Stanley Cup. But that's the next window now for the Leafs to try to sign Marner. And if you're Marner, I guess unless they're truly overpaying, or if you just get maybe, like, here's the thing. I think we have to remember, this isn't all big, as much as this isn't all set in stone, 100% going to happen. You're dealing with a very important decision for a man, for his family. Like, Marner could have a change of heart between now and July 1st and decide in the end he doesn't want to go there. But my point is this: the most likely outcome, in my view, right now, is that he becomes a free agent, because he's put himself on that track now. He didn't even engage with the Leafs on contract talk. So, like, he has set himself up to where he's earned that right in every way, shape, and form to do it. And so, unless after the season the Leafs offer him something he can't refuse, or maybe again his heartstrings are pulling at him, maybe they get close to the playoffs and don't get, like, we can game theory this all kinds of ways. But I think ultimately the most likely conclusion to this is that he tests free agency, and then I don't know what happens. I mean, it's happened before where guys even get to almost free agency and still sign with their original team. I mean, remember Steven Stamkos, when he was in his prime, signed an extension with Tampa on like June 29th. Like, that could even happen, where he gets close to it and he's thinking about it and then he pivots back. Like, it's hard to say, there's just all kinds of possibilities